Hello friends, here I am with new story. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. So let's start the video with summary. In this, Naruto will be god and son of Poseidon and Kushina, 93% Greek god, born in Element Nation. After the death of Kushina, the baby Naruto will be sent his father's world and raised by Poseidon and Amphitrite. He will make some adventures and love with goddesses, and eventually he will help Percy and Half-Bloods, Prince of Sea Chapter 1. The prophecy and meeting with Uzumaki in Olympus. The gods have their earlier meeting for winter. Suddenly, Apollo, god of the sun, prophecies went out and started to say legacy of the sea will rise. The son of the sea will bear and become the prince of the sea. Will become a god among gods and help Olympus to stand still. Every god and goddess was taken aback and returned their gaze to Apollo. The god of the sun gained his consciousness and looked around, just thinking, why the hell does everyone look like shit? And regained his thoughts, asked, why you guys looking at me like that? Then the god of the sea started to speak. Apollo, you just said a prophecy related to me and it deals with Olympus also. Every member of the council starts to murmur about the prophecy. After seeing that, Zeus became irritated and yelled, okay, that's enough, shut your mouth, and as for the prophecy, we will wait and see, and if that's all, everyone may leave with a single word. He vanished with a flash. Show off, Poseidon said and rolled his eyes. After that, every Olympian leaving Zeus alone started to speak about the prophecy. See Prince Ha, we'll see, Apollo said, nodding to Hermes and Dionysus. There everyone heard a squeal. Hey, did you heard that we are having a new prince, and I am just thinking about how he will look cute and handsome, said none other than the goddess of love, Aphrodite. The goddess of the moon rolled her eyes and said, will you stop thinking about such kinds of things? The baby didn't even bear and you start to think about your love games. At the same time, Demeter, Athena and Hestia are thinking about the prophecy, and Hera thought that child should not be another demigod. After that, everyone starts to leave and Poseidon returns to Atlantis with the thought of prophecy. In Element Nation, 2 years after the prophecy, a 16-year-old Demeter with red mixed brown hair and beautiful ocean eyes and face looked like the teen version of Aphrodite, and she was running to save her life from the enemy ninja after her. She slipped and fell to the ground as a result of a stone. She looked at the enemy ninjas with fearful eyes, and one of them said, you Uzumaki bitches have more energy, huh? That would be entertaining us, nee. The ninjas were about to take her when they heard a man say, hey you three, what are you doing with that girl? When the ninja turned to face the sound, they saw a 17-year-old with 5.10 in height, black hair, green eyes, and a well-built body. One of the ninjas said, get out of here punk before we kill you. Then we have to fight. Oh okay, do your best, said the teen with black hair. Oh, look, some civilians have the guts to fight with us. Oh boys, do you know what we do these kinds of punks? Said the group's leader. The two ninjas then marched to attack before reaching the attack on the boy, and they were thrown unconscious by the high velocity of the water. The leader of the group freaked out by what he had seen and run from there. They approached the girl and asked, hey, are you okay? And Uzumaki answered with a low voice, I'm okay and thanks for the help. Seeing that the boy began to laugh, and seeing that she was irritated, she said, hey, what's so funny? Nothing. I'm Poseidon, said the boy. The Uzumaki said, I am Uzumaki Kushina, and looked at him suspiciously and asked, you look different. I don't think you are from Konoha, and which village you are from, and I can say by that fight with the ninja you are not a civilian. Yeah, you can say that I am not from here, and I don't know what you said before, ninja. I don't know what that is supposed to mean, she said with a soft smile. By looking at that smile, Kushina's heartbeat started to rise and she blushed. She thought, why am I feeling like that? Then she began to ask who he was and where he came from, and when he answered her question she became shocked. Flashback, okay, where are you from and who are you? Kushina asked with curiosity. The boy suddenly transformed into a weird dress and, with holding a trident in his left hand, said, I am the Greek god of the sea and earthquakes, horses, and I am from a different dimension. Oh, you're a god, huh? Then okay, I'm also a god. What's it like that? Don't make me laugh, just drop your hinge and explain where you're from. This just made Poseidon think, why I feel like arguing with Athena, and snap out his thoughts and began to speak seriously. Okay, how can I make you believe you? Suddenly, Kushina had an idea. Okay, you're god of the sea, then made a small pond here, and there is a beautiful pond with various fishes and water plants. That moment, Kushina's jaws just dropped because of what happened before her. End of the flashback. Then you are really a god, she said with a glint in her eyes. Then they started walking while talking about element nations, with Ninja and Poseidon telling us very little about his land. With concern, Poseidon asked, "Say Kushina, where are you going now? I can help you." Kushina became depressed and began to cry as she described how her homeland and family had been destroyed by enemies and that she had nowhere to go. While looking at this, Poseidon asked her, "If you don't mind, you can live with me. I am living in a small sea village and you may live there peacefully." After hearing that, Kushina hugged Poseidon and said thanks for everything. After saving Kushina, both Uzumaki and Poseidon became like each other. Days passed, months passed, and years passed until they were as close as a couple. Prince of the Sea Chapter 2, Love in Pregnancy and Poseidon's Leave. After they rescued Kushina from the enemy ninjas 2 years later, Poseidon and Kushina began to act more like a couple. The couple sat on the seashore one night during a full moon and enjoyed the moment with the sound of the sea and the light of the moon. Poseidon and Kushina's eyes met without them realizing it, their faces were close to each other, and they kissed each other blissfully before realizing they were both together. Kushina-chan, I'm sorry I didn't mean to finish the sentence by kissing Poseidon and, I like you, but I was afraid if I said this to you, you would leave me to cry. Poseidon's face softened as he looked at her, and he hugged her and said, I love you, Kushina. Don't think for a moment that I will leave you. Kushina began to kiss him furiously after hearing that, constantly saying. The couple became close to each other after proposing their feelings to each other. Kushina ran around in joy, looking for Poseidon, and when she saw him, she jumped up and hugged him. Oh, Kushi-chan, what happened? You look happy, Poseidon said as he kissed her head. I am pregnant, Kushina said with tears of joy. Poseidon was stunned at the moment and began to shout joyfully, I have become a father continuously again and again, and hugged her, promising both of them to raise their little maelstrom with care. Now 7 months pregnant, Kushina was cuddling with her lover in bed. Suddenly, a messenger bird emerged from the portal and gave the letter to Poseidon. Poseidon started to read the letter. Hello my dear, this is Amphitrite, where were you? You just went on vacation for almost 3 years and you didn't even attend the council meeting after the prophecy. Zeus is yelling at the meeting, and Triton and I can't take on any more work. Please return in 2 days. Poseidon became concerned after reading that and considered how I am going to say this to Kushina. Looking at Poseidon's worried expression, Kushina began to ask, Dear, what is in that letter, and why are you looking worried after reading it? In placed her head on his shoulder. Poseidon begins to give the details and Kushina begins to cry. So you too, abandon me like others? At that moment, Poseidon's heart clenched, gave a comforting hug and said no dear, I am not leaving you permanently, Kushi, and I can't bring you with me. It will cause many problems and I will promise you that I will come to you and our baby in Atlantis, just a few months after solving all the problems. Kushina tightly hugged him and nuzzled into his chest and cried over and over. Poseidon waited until she stopped crying. Promise me you'll come to pick up our son and me in a few months, she said. Looking into her eyes, the happiness was replaced by insecurity and fear, and as Poseidon began to say, I, Poseidon, god of the sea, will return after months and take my wife Kushina and my son to home, promise on sticks. A thunderclap rang out across the sky. Kushina knows the promise to sticks is a sacred one and it will be watched by fates that are seen to be known in the way of Poseidon. After 2 days, Kushina stands on the sea floor, clutching a pearl given to her for her safety the night before. Flashback. The couple decided to enjoy the 2 days and spend them together. They both cuddled in bed the night before they left. Kushina-chan, I love you so much. I'm sorry to leave you, and as I said, even if I'm not here, I will always watch over you and the child, the president said, kissing her on the cheek. I know, but it hurts, you know, but don't worry, I and my children will wait for you. Kushina nuzzled into Poseidon's chest. Poseidon gave her a white pearl and kissed her, saying, whenever you use this, my help will come to you. The couple went to sleep. The flashback concludes. Next morning, Poseidon hugged her tightly and kissed her hand with love and said, be safe Kushi-chan, call me if you are in trouble, use the pearl to communicate. Kushina didn't say a single word, she just hugged him tightly. After comforting each other, Poseidon freed them from Kushina and opened the portal. disappearing with the light. Kushina just stared at the place and started to cry. A miracle had just occurred. A dolphin approached the land in the sea and looked at the dolphin, touching its face and eyes. It makes Kushina happy for the time being. The dolphins and sea creatures came to the sea, or near Kushina whenever she was in the sea as the days passed. 2 months after Poseidon's departure, it's late at night, with a full moon glinting in the sky, and you can see a young lady sitting on the beach, none other than a Kushina. She's communicating with her unborn child by touching her 9-month pregnant stomach. Suddenly, the sea began to glow, which caused her to close her eyes, and then the light glow opened her eyes. There was a man in his 60s with a beard and a good body. When the man began to move in the direction of Kushina, she panicked, trying to get up and falling. She was terrified and attempted to flee when she heard her name, Kushina, and turned towards the voice coming from the side, where she saw the man she was terrified of. Then he started to speak. "Don't panic, my child, I am not going to attack you," he said with a soft smile. She tried to regain her strength after hearing that and asked, shakily, "Who are you? How did you learn my name, sir, and are you a god?" When the old man heard this, he burst out laughing and said, "Don't be afraid, my child. I am the Titan of the sea. My name is Oceanus, and you are my legacy." And Oceanus knew Kushina was a Greek god's legacy, but he didn't want to say it now. After hearing that, she began to wonder, "I thought Titans weren't in our realm, and why are you here, Grandpa?" After hearing the word, Grandpa Oceanus' face turned into a soft smile and he started telling her about the prophecy of the Prince of the Sea which was told by Apollo 3 years before, and also said her baby was the one child of the sea, the Prince of Sea. Kushina was taken aback and inquired, "Does Poseidon know about this?" "No, I and Fate only know now. After the birth of the child, the whole world will know. That is why I have come, child. I am going to bless your child and you so that both of your Titan blood will gain strength and power." Kushina's body is bathed in bright blue light. Before leaving his home realm after blessing the Titan, he warned Kushina to be careful as a child and to have a son because he would play the main role between the gods. "Many enemies will try to attack you and your child." "I will, Grandpa, and thank you for the blessing," I told him. Then Oceanus vanished into the light, leaving her alone. Kushina rubbed her pregnant stomach protectively and prayed to God for the safety of her child. Silently, a month after Poseidon's departure, in the early morning hours, a light glowed in Kushina's room, leaving a letter for her. Kushina woke up from sleep as she tried to move out of the room. She saw a letter with the symbol of a trident and she knew who had just sent it to her. She starts to read to my Kushi-chan. "How are you and our child, and sorry for the delay. I am having a problem here. I know I am not like other husbands. However, I will do my best and love you. Love, Poseidon. P.S. You can see a pearl necklace in the letter that is for you and be safe." After reading that, her eyes started to water and she hugged the necklace to her chest and said, "I will." Prince of Sea Chapter 3, The Prince's Birth and Kushina's Death. The days fly by. The birth of the sea's child is approaching. After the meeting with Oceanus, Kushina became more careful about her surroundings because she felt being watched by someone. Kushina was sleeping in her bed one night when the outside sky darkened with storm clouds and began to rain heavily due to the high velocity of the wind. The silent sea now appears to be a terror, and it has begun to produce massive waves. Kushina is being chased by monsters and she is running near the sea. Suddenly, she hears a howling sound and demonic voices saying, "So you are the one who will pay the price of the sea, the one whom our master wishes to kill." In terror, Uzumaki ran as fast as she could away from the wolf-like monster, but she tripped down and the monsters approached her to kill her. Kushina awoke in bed, terrified, and looked around, only to realize it had all been a nightmare, her face drenched in sweat. She was terrified, but no one could console her, so she began to speak to her unborn child, "My little Naruto-chan, don't worry. Kakin will save us from everything, and your Tachan will keep us safe. I just want Shito-chan now, but he isn't here," she said, clutching the pearl given to her by Poseidon and crying, before she could think, and fell back asleep. The following day, Kushina went to see a local doctor for her monthly checkup, and the old lady told her, "Young lady, your baby boy is fine, and the delivery will be in 2 days. Kushina was relieved and smiled softly after the checkup, even though she had experienced numerous problems in the previous days. Her only thought was, she is going to give her Naruto-chan birth, and her long-awaited wish will come true. But there is a slight sadness in her eyes that Poseidon won't be here. The delivery date arrives the day before the delivery date, at night, and Kushina has no idea what the fates have in store for her. Suddenly, she heard the sound of horror reverberating throughout the village, and she went to her door, beginning to shudder with fear that her nightmare had come true. She saw a group of monsters killing every villager. She considered helping people right now, but her condition prevented her from doing so. Finally, she considered running to the sea to escape with the help of a boat. "You morons, the one our master wishes to kill is running there. Go get her," said the leader of the monsters' horde. After that, a group of monsters chased her and suddenly one of the monsters in the group threw its axe over. Before she could detect it, it was embedded in her back. Blood started to flow from her body and she fell to her knees on the ground. Kushina started to cry and pray to Poseidon for help and, suddenly, a sound set in her mind: break the pearl. Without hesitation, she broke the pearl. At the moment light grew strong to distract the monsters and she felt someone carrying her. After the glow started to die in that place, there was no trace of Uzumaki. While looking at the leader of the group of monsters, he began to yell, "Where the hell had she gone, you moron? If you don't want to feel our master's wrath, search for her." Kushina was being held by a water nymph and guarded by 3 water sprites on a nearby island, far from the sea village. Kushina started to regain her consciousness and looked around her and realized she was in a different place, and she heard a voice saying, "My lady, don't strain yourself, you have lost more blood in that attack." All she could see was a lady looking like half fish at the bottom, and the water nymph said, "Lady, my name is Selena. I am here under the order of Poseidon to protect you and baby, and these 3 are water spirits who came with me to help you." Her water broke before she could respond, and she yelled in agony. The water spirits began to assist her and tend to her pain, saying, "My lady, just push. We can see the baby's head." Kushina begins to push, and finally, the baby cries, and she begins to cry, overjoyed, and asks one of the spirits to give her child to her. The baby had ocean blue eyes like his mother, sun-like blonde hair, and the face structure of Poseidon. The baby stopped crying and looked at his mother with interest, then touched her face with his little hands and began to giggle. Kushina starts to coo, "My Naruto-chan, you look beautiful and I am going to feed you and play with you. We're going to have a good time, and your father will come to get us soon, so don't worry." Seeing the scene of mother-son love, the water sprites and nymphs smiled and, at the same time, worried about Kushina's health condition. They tried to heal her wound, but it was too late for her. But suddenly she felt her away, then realized she lost more blood, and while thinking, leaving her baby alone. Before leaving her conscious, in a death state, she asked help from the spirit, "Please save my child and take him to Poseidon please, and say I love him." The spirit looked at her sadly and promised her to hand over her baby to Poseidon. Kushina kissed her baby on the forehead and said her final words with tears, "My little Naruto-chan, mother is not going to be there for you and I am sorry for that." Kushina began to eat healthy foods and study well, "Become a good man and obey your father, and I will always keep an eye on you in the stars." She closed her eyes and died. The sea fell silent and began to rain as if the sky had cried out for her and the sea had made a silent prayer for her. And when the nymphs and spirits saw this, they began to sing sadly and properly bury Kushina's body on that island. Then Selena looked at the baby and he was already asleep. While seeing that, she smiled sadly. The child lost his mother on the same day he was born, not even knowing her fully. This child has a powerful aura, and when he becomes an adult, he will be the strongest one among the gods, said one of the water spirits to her companions. Selena didn't say anything, just smiled at how cute he was while sleeping. Through a portal in the middle of the island, the Prince of the Sea left the element nation with water spirits for Atlantis. Not knowing anything going around him, the sun sea god sleeps quietly in the hands of spirits. In Atlantis, Poseidon was in tears when he saw Kushina praying. She was covered in blood, and the fact that she had died made him cry even more. "Don't worry, Kushina, I will raise our son into a proper man, and I will never leave him," he promised himself at the time. To Prince of Sea Chapter. For the arrival of Prince, the group of 3 water spirits and a nymph with a little Naruto are making their way to the Greek god's world. They arrived at the dimensional portal opening after 5 hours of travel and entered it to find themselves in an ocean filled with a massive amount of salt water. "Finally, we have come to a world. We have to hurry and take the young master to Lord Poseidon," said the water nymph Selena, and got a nod from her companion. Now the group made their way to below the level of the sea. Naruto had now woken up and looked at the area and looked at Selena with curiosity. Selena began to smile at him as she noticed this. Suddenly, a blue light began to glow over the body of baby Naruto, which shocked them because Naruto was radiating high divine power at the time, leading them to wonder, what the hell just happened? Can a child radiate a power like that? In Atlantis, Amphitrite and Triton suddenly felt a surge of divine power. Oh, my, just radiate this power. She must be a strong one. They yelled in their heads. Unbeknown to them, Poseidon knew who it was, and he swelled in pride because the power of his son revolted him. But one thing surprised him. Naruto was born as a god rather than a demigod. So this Kushina was not human, somehow related to the gods, and how didn't I recognize it? Thought Poseidon. At Olympus, with gods, everyone felt the spike of power and everyone went out of their temple and went to the meeting hall. Right now, the gods and goddesses are sitting in their respective seats. There has been a murmur about the sudden power. While looking at this, Zeus yelled silence, and when everyone fell silent, he began to speak. You all know that sudden divine power radiates from someone, and we have to figure out who he or she is, he said, receiving nods from others. The person who radiates this power must be strong as Father and other big three, said Athena, goddess of wisdom, thoughtfully. Yeah, Dad, I feel like that, Apollo admitted. Ares was viewed in a different light. I'll get a challenge, he declared arrogantly. The other gods and goddesses are thinking about the matter seriously. Suddenly, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, got everyone's attention. Dad, we have to send a search team, and got nods from everyone. Okay, I'm giving this job to Artemis and her hunters to find and lead them here. And be careful, Zeus said with a heavy sigh. I will, Dad, Artemis said. The meeting concluded, and everyone returned to their jobs. With Naruto and the group, the blue light that had glowed around Naruto for a minute had stopped. Now Naruto does not look like a human, and his body and energy changed like gods, and the presence of the divine spread to all of the sea. Suddenly, sea animals such as fish, seahorses, sharks, and seals, as well as all water spirits, are drawn to the divine power and filled with kindness, love, power, and authority. Selena simply gasped at what she had witnessed, and her thoughts raced like a bull. How can a demigod produce that much power? She wondered. Despite being one of the big three's children, he appears to be a god rather than a demigod. At the moment, a large group of sea sprites and sea animals were moving towards the divine power, but when they arrived, they came to a halt. They saw a baby with a godly structure emitting godly power, similar to the Olympians and, for the time being, similar to a child. A young sea spirit moved near to the baby and woke up Naruto, who saw the sea spirit curiously with his small little ocean-like eyes. The young sea spirit squealed and said, "Cute baby." Naruto began to giggle and touch the sea spirit, causing everyone around him to smile brightly. Selena looked at Naruto, puzzled, and wondered, how can this child be born as if both of his parents were not gods? This is going to shake every god's foundation. After regaining her composure, Selena noticed baby Naruto with his tiny hands playing with the face of a young water spirit, which made her smile at that innocent face. Selena, who is this baby god in your hand, and why do I recognize that child's face? Asked one of the members of the group kneeling before Naruto. The question made everyone think about the same question. Seeing this, Selena mulls over whether or not to reveal that the baby is Poseidon's son. Finally, she said, Lord Naruto Uzumaki, prince of sea and son of Poseidon, god of sea, earthquakes and horses. This caused everyone in their group's eyes to widen and most of their jaws to drop to the ground. Then cheers and joyful cries sounded throughout the sea. In Olympus, with Apollo in his temple, Apollo was happily chatting about the late-night party with his brothers, Hermes and Dionysus. Suddenly, the three heard, All hail Naruto Uzumaki, prince of the sea and son of Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes and horses. The group just froze up and dropped their chat, and Apollo laughed like the prophecy about my little cousin was happening. Ha! The other two only nodded their heads, thinking about their uncle Poseidon and how he was going to escape Amphitrite's wrath for cheating on a woman. With Aphrodite, and Ares, the goddess of love, was currently seated on her lover boyfriend's lap in her temple, holding him in a deep kiss while dressed in a very tight and small pink nightgown. She was barely paying attention to what was going on around her. As the two were making out, they were about to take the kiss to another level before the couple heard "All hail Naruto Uzumaki, Prince of the Sea and son of Poseidon, God of the Sea, Earthquakes and Horses." This made both Ares and Aphrodite do their lovemaking, and they saw the baby, Naruto. The gears in Aphrodite's head began moving before, out of nowhere, she let out a high-pitched squeal that the gods had never heard before. "It's finally happened. I want details." Meanwhile, Ares exclaimed, "Finally, the sea bird has a child. Now it will be entertaining." With Hera, Hestia and Demeter, the three goddesses, were now sitting in Olympus' garden chatting happily about there, and Hera was about to say something. Hailing sound heard by three. "All hail Naruto Uzumaki, Prince of Sea and son of Poseidon, God of the Sea, Earthquakes and Horses." After hearing that, Hestia and Demeter felt happy for their brother and smiled softly, seeing the image of the baby, and Hera remained a neutral expression. With Athena, the goddess of wisdom, was in her library with a handful of books and reading them at the moment. She heard about the hail, "All hail Naruto Uzumaki, Prince of the Sea and son of Poseidon, God of the Sea, Earthquakes and Horses." She saw the baby, but instead of cursing because of her bad blood with Poseidon, she smiled at the image of baby with Artemis and her huntress. Now Artemis was moving with her group of hunters to the place where the divine power was released and led them to the way of the sea. Then they noticed a group of water sprites and species bowing to a baby being held by a water nymph. This drew Artemis and her companions' attention to the child, and Artemis wondered, why am I feeling godly power the same as an Olympian as a child? At that moment, she heard a hail from the water nymph holding the baby. "All hail Naruto Uzumaki, Prince of the Sea and son of Poseidon, God of the Sea, Earthquakes and Horses." This made her freeze up. Now she knew where the power radiated, and she thought, so this one Poseidon child has, by radiating a level of divine power, the child is not a demigod. Then who is the child's mother? She dashed to Olympus with a thought. In Atlantis, "All hail Naruto Uzumaki, Prince of the Sea and son of Poseidon, God of the Sea, Earthquakes and Horses." The hail shook the city of Atlantis, shocking the majority of the people while also making them happy about their lord. But Amphitrite, when she heard this, she rushed to her husband's room and blew up the door and shouted with anger at the betrayal of her husband, "How dare you, Poseidon? You cheated me another and had child." Poseidon was now struggling to answer because he loved her as much as he loved Kushina, and he started to say sorry continuously with a small cry. When she saw her husband's condition, she fell silent. She had never seen her husband in this state before, and she said sternly, "Tell me everything about Poseidon." Then Poseidon began to talk about his vacation in the Element Nation, how he met Kushina, and the love they shared, and Amphitrite noticed a small smile on his face when her husband mentioned his lover. Then there's the silence of death. Poseidon cried and told her about Kushina's pregnancy and how he left her alone and her death by monsters, and the baby was a full god. She was carried to Atlantis by his servant, and this made her a little bit saddened. At the same time, she was surprised at how a baby was born as a god and a mortal was a god. Before she could say something, a guardian came and said, "Lord and Lady, Prince." In approaching the city and getting a nod from Poseidon and a curious look from the Queen of the Sea, the guard left. Poseidon gave his wife a pleading look, and with a heavy sigh, she nodded and said, "This will be the last time you cheat on Poseidon, or you will face the consequences." Poseidon nodded and smiled and thanked her. Then Amphitrite and Poseidon moved to the entrance to welcome the new Prince of the Sea. Prince of Sea. Chapter 5. The water nymph, who was carrying the baby prince in her arms, is now making her way toward the entrance to Atlantis, and they are being pursued by various water sprites, Nads, and other water sprites. "All hail to Prince Naruto," the Atlantis gate guards shouted as they knelt beside their new prince and baby Naruto, who stared at them cutely. Looking at this made Selena and the other three companions giggle at Naruto's look, while also wondering how quickly the word of Naruto's arrival reached the inhabitants of Atlantis. When the group got close to the gate, they noticed a familiar face and he asked, "Selena, how was your journey?" "So, this is my new younger brother?" he inquired. "Yes, Lord Trenton, but we can't save the baby's mother," Selena said with a sad smile as she handed Trenton the baby. Triton looked at the baby in his hand with interest, and he sensed divine energy coming from the baby at the same level as his own father's. Coming out on his own, he looked at Naruto, who was looking curiously, and when the baby felt familiar energy, he started saying ba 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 bu bu. Trenton smiled at Naruto and said smoothly, "Hello little one, I am your big brother, and I will keep an eye on you. We can play around the sea." Baby Naruto snuggled into his brother's hand warmth. While seeing the conversation between the brothers made the people around them smile happily. Triton and baby Naruto have arrived in Atlantis. There, they were greeted by various water deities. Finally, Triton saw familiar faces, none other than Poseidon and Amphitrite. When Poseidon saw the baby in Triton's hand, he dashed towards him and Naruto, who was staring at them with interest. "Hello son, may I have the baby, please?" he asked childishly, which amused Triton, and with a nod, he handed the baby over to Poseidon's hands. "Hello Naruto, I am your father and don't worry, I will protect you from everything as I promised, and I am sorry for not protecting your mother," he said quietly, and the baby frowned quietly and pulled Poseidon's beard and played with it. Amphitrite saw the conversation between her husband and the baby with a small smile on her face. Suddenly, the baby began to cry, and Poseidon and Triton tried to comfort him, but neither of them stopped crying. Knowing why the baby was crying, Amphitrite rushed up to them, smacked their heads, and said, "You two idiots, the baby ate nothing after birth and, of course, he was hungry and scared," and then looked at Poseidon and said, "Give me the baby." Poseidon reluctantly hands the baby over to his wife. When Naruto felt the warmth, he stopped crying and snuggled into Amphitrite's chest, which made motherly smile. "Oh, my little Naru is feeling hungry, ha! Don't worry, I will feed you and raise you as a wise man, unlike your father," Amphitrite said to Naruto, who was giggling at her and sucking her fingers. This caused Poseidon and Triton's minds to freeze and they stared at each other. "Dad, did you see that? Or am I hallucinating?" he asked, perplexed. Before Poseidon could respond, Amphitrite turned toward them and said sternly, "Now I and my little prince are going to my room and don't disturb us," and went to her room, which made both my son and dad gobsmacking and they said, "We are whipped." In the Amphitrite chamber, now you can see Amphitrite, who was holding Naruto and feeding him milk with a motherly smile. She had no idea the baby made her calm and attracted her motherly side, because her firstborn child grew quickly, like other gods. Thinking that she softly stroked Naruto, who was sleeping peacefully in her hands and said, "Don't grow up quickly my little Naru mama wants to enjoy your childhood." Poseidon, unbeknownst to her, overheard the conversation and moved to his wife, hugging her tightly and kissing her head. "I love you and thank you for accepting Naruto," he said, kissing her head. This shocked Amphitrite, who cried happily on her husband's chest before falling asleep. The following day, Poseidon smiled and he watched his wife humming a tune as every mother does for their child, and it brought up sad memories of his life being eaten by his dad, and when he was freed from his dad's stomach, he was a youngster, so he didn't have such a kind of mother, like Zeus, and now, like Naruto. Even though he felt happy with his child, boo-baba-baba-boo-boo, the baby god babbled as he clapped his pudgy hands together. Amphitrite giggled and kissed her baby boy's forehead and said, "You are so cute," which made little Naruto giggle back at his mother with beautiful sea blue eyes and grab hold of her finger. "Aren't you my little Naruto?" Amphitrite laughed along with her baby and looked at her husband and said, "He looks like you when he laughs." Amphitrite smiled at her husband, who had become much more cheerful and optimistic lately, and kissed his cheek. "Come on, take your son." Poseidon nodded without looking away from his happy, giggling son's face and held Naruto in his arms with a bright smile. Naruto giggled as his father's bear tickled his face and tugged on it roughly, making the sea god cringe. His son was already strong. Poseidon felt happy the moment. At that moment, a guard entered the room and announced, "My lord, Lord Oceanus is here to meet with you," which surprised Poseidon and Amphitrite. Then a 60-year-old man with a long beard entered the room and was greeted by Amphitrite. "Welcome father, and may I know the reason for your sudden visit?" This made the old man laugh and say, "Oh, nothing personal, my child, I am here to see my grandchild, to which Poseidon inquired, how come he is your grandchild? Amphitrite looked at her father as well as her husband. Oceanus' face became solemn at this point, and he stated, because Kushina was my legacy and, in some way, was related to the 4 Olympians. Poseidon became shocked and asked, how do you know Kushina? And how come I don't sense her power? That is because the Kushina lineage had been masked by fated Shinto deities to reduce problems and she was not claimed by her godly parents, said Oceanus with a heavy sigh. This shocked both Amphitrite and Poseidon even more, and Amphitrite looked at her father, curiously asking, Father, even though Kushina is a demigod with Titan blood, was Naruto born as a god? Before Oceanus could respond, a flash appeared in the room, revealing 3 ladies, Atropos, Clotho, and Lycosis, who were none other than the Fates. After seeing them, Poseidon politely asked, what do we owe the Fates? We are here to talk about your child. He became a god thanks to his mother, not a normal demigod because she held 85% of the god's blood and 12% of the Titan's blood. Because of the lack of her godly blood, less than 90% of her descendants did not reform as goddesses after death, but in your son's case, because of you as his father, he had godly blood, and the god and Titan blood Oceanus and Uranus running through his veins created you and your brothers. She said Clotho and got a nod from 2 of her sisters. Now Poseidon's jaw hit the floor after hearing his son's lineage. Amphitrite now looked at the sleeping Naruto with a motherly smile and felt pride that her son would become more powerful than the big 3. Oceanus also surprised Naruto, not only with his blood but also with the blood of his father, Uranus. After regaining the composure, Amphitrite inquired, may I know which domain my son will hold in the future? When the Fates heard this, they all smiled and said together, all hail the Naruto god, sea, whirlpool, storm, nature, sky, wind, energy and justice. 3 of them had vanished with that. Poseidon and Amphitrite didn't know what to do and Oceanus was laughing at looking at his daughter and son-in-law's faces and felt happy for his grandson who was now sleeping, not knowing what was happening around him, and he left from there. Poseidon said with a soft smile, Amphitrite, we are going to announce Naruto as Prince of the Sea officially and we have to go to Olympus tomorrow to introduce our family members. That got a happy nod from Amphitrite and she smiled at her son, who was snuggled up in her warmth. Even though she didn't give birth to Naruto, she felt a strong connection with him. This is the end of this story. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. And please watch other playlists I make. And please help me grow my channel. And please recommend me any Naruto stories you all like to listen. I hope you all fine.